Okay, we are live on the YouTube.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. It's Friday, February 28th, and you are in the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee. We are here with Legislative Council discussing the latest draft of H 125, an act related to reporting on the energy transition. I'm State Representative Kathleen James from the Hedi 4 District.
Scott Campbell from St. John Prairie Company.
Richard Bailey, Lamoille 2.
Tomorrow with the many. Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Territory, Washington 2.
Graham Cutler, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Great.
Laura Sibilia, Wyndham 2.
Jack Locker, Committee Assistant.
Matt Cota, Meadow Hill, on behalf of the Vermont Retail Grocers Association, the Vermont Fuel Dealers Association.
All righty. For the record,
Helen Tchaikovsky, Office of the Legislative Council. I'm here today on H 125, the committee's strike all amendment draft 2.1. So I was here 2 days ago, and then you had looked at draft 1.1, and then you did hear from Secretary Moore. And so this version is a rewrite based on the language that Secretary Moore submitted. And then you all discussed. And so this was sort of the merging of the two. It seems like perhaps I did actually already miss some things. So this is an attempt to merge those two things, but we'll walk through to see if I captured all of it.
super. I'm sorry, I'm not ready. Let me just grab my notes from last time. All right, take it away, Ellen, and thank you.
So this bill is still one section, adding a new section to Title 30, 8012, Energy Transition Economic Impacts Report. So on or before December 15th, 2025, and annually thereafter, the Secretary of Natural Resources, in consultation with relevant state agencies, including Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, Department of Public Service, the Agency of Transportation, Department of Labor, the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, and the Department of Taxes, shall publish a report that highlights existing data sources and indicators relevant to the impacts of the clean energy transition on Vermonters and maps them by region. So, Secretary Moore had proposed most of that language, but your committee discussed on line 9, making it sure it was an annual report, adding the Agency of Agriculture specifically, and then also maps. So she did not originally include maps in this part, but I added maps to line 15, 16.
Okay, let us stop there. Thank you, Ellen.
And line 17 also points out that this, in the previous 5 years.
Didn't go there yet.
Sorry.
Yeah. We've stopped at line 16.
I mean, we can go on, but I just did the first paragraph.
I remember we had wanted to add ag, so we added ag. I think maps them by region gets to our intent about both visual data to the extent possible and region.
Not fair.
What's
your definition of region?
Well, the reason why I think region might be okay is that I think we had asked Secretary Moore if she could provide the data by county, and she said no, that she wasn't sure all the data could be provided by county. And so my thought on region, and I think we'll definitely need to send this draft to Secretary Moore and get her feedback. My thought on region is that it leaves it open to the available data. So tell us what they have.
Region is very broad. And it could mean a lot of different things. So I don't know, but I would feel better if it was more clear as to what a region was considered. By county?
By location. County, I think county is a no-go.
Yeah. No, I think we need to clarify region. Because we could do, you name any part of law, you could name it a region. Yeah. Yeah. There are sort of traditional regions. Well, regions, I can think of a half a dozen different maps that show different regions.
Yeah.
Within state government. So that's region for the different maps. Yeah.
We could say, maps them by location when relevant. Some of the data is not location based thing at all.
Relevant and available.
Yeah, how about, let's try for now, location when relevant and available.
That's instead of region.
I think so, yeah, I think that would answer Representative Southworth's concern without trying to do it by county, which I'm just quite sure is not possible. Representative Sebelia?
Yeah, I want to make sure that we're not providing an out for reporting state level data because that is not helpful in answering the question that we are asking. So I am wondering if we can say reporting by region or county or explaining why the data cannot be reported by geography. So at a minimum, that at least highlights for us places where we are flying completely blind about how Vermonters are experiencing the energy transition.
I have something else to add, but I don't want to cut off if there's a response to that.
No, go ahead.
So also I will say, I, in trying to draft this, was struggling with how to phrase it. And so I did also add a line on page 2, line 16. And so if perhaps it's not helpful in A, I added it in C so that the report shall also include maps and graphic displays of the data compiled. Which leaves room for them to interpret how they could graphically display it. And so you could be more specific, but so I put it in 2 places in case it's more helpful. You can change that.
I'm wondering if it's helpful to only discuss it in the second place. Rep. Sebelia, is your hand still up?
It is.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to should we be adding a purpose section here to explain the problem that we're trying to solve? And so the problem that I am hoping we are trying to solve is illuminating any pinch points geographically where Vermonters are experiencing the energy transition. We know that it's not being experienced the same throughout the state. So illuminating the differences.
Looks like we had purpose statement that we struck.
Adding has an intent. Which I guess we didn't do.
That might have been a different
That was a
bill.
I think that was a different bill.
That was a different bill.
That was our other reporting bill. Rep. Sebelia, we could go back to the purpose. We could add the purpose statement back. This bill proposes to require the Department of Public Service to report on the economic impacts of the transition to clean energy within the state, and then add a sentence getting to your point about how people are, how people in regions are experiencing it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Do you want it to be in session law in the law, not just in the bill? And so that would be
I think session law is fine. It's so that we are helping our administrative and Senate colleagues understand as this bill is moving forward what it is that we're trying to do so that we could send this over to the Senate and very easily they could say we already collect this data and why would we bother? What is the point?
That makes sense to me. I question for Ellen is that the purpose section does not appear in the session law. Is that right? If in the original bill from Rep Sibilia, where it says subject statement of purpose of bill as introduced. That statement of purpose did not appear in the second one. Is that correct?
Correct.
So we would need to add a purpose or an intent section in the bill somewhere if we wanted that to appear in session one, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to do that.
Rep. Mark?
Correctly.
Two things. One, this is basically just asking for data points. Do we not, at some point we were discussing an analysis. Are we, just want to be clear that what we're asking for. Are we asking for some analysis or just some data points? That's my first question. And the second question is this phrase impacts of the clean energy transition. I mean, the examples that we were using to get to was like if someone wasn't having fuel delivered to their house, or they had to drive too far to get to a gas station, you know, and there could be other causes to that outcome other than the clean energy transition. There could be supply chain issues. There could be any number of reasons why we get to that point. So I'm curious whether we want to identify specifically the impacts of the clean energy transition, or we want to leave that more open-ended so that other that we're not ruling out other factors that could get us to what we're looking at, which is we don't want Vermonters to be left behind in certain circumstances.
We get to that at the bottom of pages 2 and 3. Maybe we need to beef that up a little bit.
Yeah.
Representative
We're
Sackler?
just going to tack on to the Morrow saying that I think, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
Are you thinking that broad statement is going to skew the results of what we're looking for? Because that's kind of what I'm starting to think too.
Yeah, I mean, potentially. I mean, it limits them to however they interpret impacts of the clean energy transition,
Right.
whereas I can envision other scenarios that get us to having, Vermonters limited access to fuel sources other than the impact of the clean energy transition. It's just a question for folks. I just want to make sure this is going to be a fully usable report. And then the question of whether we just want data or we want them to do an analysis or not, I think it should be, I mean, as I read it now, it's just data, right?
We didn't get to page 2 yet.
Yeah. Why don't we circle
Okay.
back to that
Okay,
question?
that's fine.
Because Secretary Moore had added some stuff at the end that I think gets to what why don't we wait till we're done walking through and see whether we think it's clear that we want some analysis of this. Representative Sibilia?
Yeah, I have a question for Representative Morrow. What are you thinking about, like, for instance, economic factors or market factors that might cause the loss of a gas station or consolidation of fuel dealers? What are the other factors that you are thinking about that could be part of this?
Well, it could be various things. I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it. I just don't want to limit the scope if there, it could be a supply chain issue.
It could simply be people moving out of that part of the state, so there aren't enough people there to support the
Right,
state.
it could be economic factors unrelated to the clean energy transition. Could be another flood that impacts fuel delivery situations.
I have a suggestion, if I may.
Uh-huh.
I wonder if we just,
Keep going.
I think it's a reasonable point, but I'm just wondering if another way of putting it would be, in order to understand the evolving energy market in Vermont, or something more broad like that doesn't limit it to considerations of clean energy transition, although that is one of the drivers of the evolving energy market. Something like that, I guess I'll ask Rep Morrow and Rep Sibilia whether that would something more general would work. And this is something that we would ask Ellen to put into another paragraph as a purpose or intent
So
section.
Vermonters, yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Vermonters are paying for energy costs. Some of those costs are regulated and known, and some of those costs are not regulated and not known. Vermonters have access to some sorts of energy that are regulated, and we know that they may or may not have access to other types of energy that are not regulated and not required. And as this market is transitioning, or as the energy economy is transitioning, I am worried that we will see what we saw happen with telecommunications happen in rural and poor parts of Vermont. And so I'm hoping that we are looking at both data and an analysis of that data, and recognizing that we are asking for some data that is part of our regulation of electric utilities, et cetera. And we're asking for other indicators of access to unregulated energy sources. Was that clear as mud? Was that helpful?
Yes, sort of. So I'm thinking that we might be bogging down a little bit. So I'm gonna recommend that we get through the rest of the draft here. And why don't we come back to whether we're gonna do a purpose or intent section and to this first paragraph. Let's make sure that we can discuss what's already in here, and then come back to some of this higher level stuff. One specific question I had was, honestly, I couldn't remember if we decided that we wanted to put in now that it was going to be updated annually. I thought we had talked about having the first report come back and we would take a look at it and then go from there. I thought I can't remember where we landed with that conversation. Anybody?
I thought we had said annually.
Okay.
I recall that we discussed whether we would keep it in 5-year blocks, and I think we decided to retain the information and add to it. So it'll have 6, 7, 8 years, each year to come 5 years.
Okay.
Could be wrong.
No, I think you're right. Okay, so let's get into what's in the report and then the analysis that we asked for at the end, and let's see if we're okay with what's in there, and then let's come back to some of our purpose stuff.
So on page 1, line 17, this is what Rep. Palin was just saying. The initial report shall provide data for the previous 5 years. Subsequent annual reports shall add data from the prior year. The report shall include current and forecasted electric rates and the number of customers with electric vehicle rates by county. On to page 2. The total megawatt of distributed solar generation facilities, including the amount installed by county and any active certificate of public good applications by county. The number of sellers and volumes of heating fuel sales by county. The number of homes receiving incentivized weatherization services by income, quintile, and county. Firms and workers in thermal sector trades by county. Transportation fuel sales by county. Progress in electric vehicle supply equipment installation, both fast charging and level 2, to meet recommendations in the Comprehensive Energy Plan and Climate Action Plan. Vehicle registrations for light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles, including new and used electric vehicles and gas vehicles. And fossil fuel and electricity consumption per unit of economic output. So this was the list that Secretary Moore sent. It is unclear to me if number 9 is something she thought they could actually provide.
She was checking on that.
Okay, she would
check on it.
And then, yes, number 6 on line 8. Your version, this is transportation fuel sales. Your version was specific to gas stations. So the transportation fuel sales would come from the Department of Motor Vehicle, fuel tax data. But this does not mention specifically the gas stations.
Could add, including the number and locations of retail outlets.
Madam Chair,
Yeah,
will that include, I don't know how many are around anymore, but it used to be, LPG was a fuel for vehicles at different times. Some vehicles were converted to LPG. And I don't see any mention of that in there either. I don't think we've even discussed that. They're probably far and fewer than they used to be, but they were vehicles that were converted over to LPG.
Transportation fuel. So. If it's being used, if LPG is being used as a transportation fuel, it would have to pay the fuel tax. The road tax, right? And
I don't know that much about it, so.
And the weights and measures division would have a record of where those filling stations.
Yeah, there are actually just filling stations specific to that. That's kind of what I'm getting at. They go to whoever sells bulk. Okay, you know, where the same place you go to get your grill tank filled.
Yeah.
Okay, setting that aside for 1 second. On transportation fuel sales by county. I think we I had here. This is we have electric rates, solar, heating fuel sales. Okay, number of sellers and volume, that's from the tax department. Transportation fuel sales by county, Ellen, I wonder if there's a way, oh, Laura, I see your hand, hang on, let me get this thought out. To get at the fact that we have 2 existing data sources that we want to tap for this, which is tax and ag. So, right?
DMV.
DMV and ag.
Yeah.
So ag is going to have the
Retail outlets.
the number, location and number of retail outlets.
Right.
And DMV will have sales.
Right. But they won't have it by county.
I think the whole county thing is doomed,
Yeah.
but just setting aside the by county thing right now, which I feel like we should just strike out everywhere. I think we could add something to number 6 to make it clear that what we're pulling from is DMV for sales volume and then ag for number and location of retail outlets. Rep Sibilia?
Yeah, location as measured by,
Where those metered pumps are.
exactly. I think we should be specific about that.
Number and location of metered pumps. I mean, we could.
I think location of,
Scott
Yeah,
suggested, Rep Campbell suggested retail outlets.
Yeah, retail
Yeah.
outlet.
yeah, retail outlets. But so the data that is going to tell us about the retail outlets is what?
The location of the pumps. But we
That's
don't-
right.
we don't
So
need the
let's specify that.
Well, we don't need the location of every pump. We just need the location of where, we don't need the location of every pump, we just need the location of pumps, you know, collectively. The locations of pumps. The difference being, instead of getting a list of, you know, 15 or 20 pumps, we only need a list of one of those pumps, in effect. So the list would be.
I think we're saying the same thing, Rep Campbell.
We're saying the same thing. Anyway, I don't know that we have to specify about pumps. I think we say retail outlets. That seems to be that's to it. But, you know, maybe we put this together and then invite these folks back in for a final run through. That would be fun.
We'll send it.
Yeah, that would be agreeable if we were to ask them how they would measure that. The thing I worry about is that if we're not specific, we may get different data sets than what we're looking for. Like tanks, for instance.
We could. I feel like we've made ourselves clear. Okay.
The voice of experience.
Yeah. Well, okay, so what would you recommend that the wording be? Rep. Sibilia, I'm looking at you. Hovering above.
Then I think what Representative Campbell said, and indicating as that it's the number of retail outlets as measured by whatever the data set is that the metered by metered pumps.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. So we're adding a level of specificity there that some of the other ones don't have, but that's okay. This should be clear. All right, moving along.
I just wanted to answer Representative Southworth's question. The gas tax applies to natural gas and propane used for vehicles. So I do think that means it would be part of that set, that data set.
So may I?
Uh-huh.
So from my experience and knowledge, which may be dated, they don't have an actual filling station, and for LPG fueled vehicles, they would go to where you get your barbecue tank filled. They don't consider that a transportation vehicle. That's a bulk fill with a cylinder.
Okay, then I don't want us to get bogged down on that if I'm
Yeah.
adding to the confusion, but it's on the tax department website. I'll just say that.
Oh, maybe we should explicitly leave it out for now, just to avoid that confusion.
You know better than I with the law, so I'll leave that up to you.
What percentage of vehicles are we talking about?
It's very low.
I'm not sure that I don't want to say the word. Is it relevant?
It's all part of the data set that's being looked for.
I think it's the.
It is.
I think it's the LP delivery trucks and and some of the trucks that look at that Vermont Gas uses. There's probably the only vehicles that use.
Well, can we ask?
I've known others that have converted their own pickups to that. So, I mean, it's right. It's minimal, but it's worth bringing up because it is part of the information I'm looking for.
You could just say gasoline and diesel and avoid the whole thing.
Sure. Okay.
I'm concerned about asking for data that a individual vendor, somebody can determine how much an individual vendor is producing, such that as the number of vendors collapse, it's identifiable what the remaining vendor has, and then competitors then have an advantage, maybe through their bulk buying, to discount per se and attack the region in expanding their business at the cost of the
One thing that we do have in here is recommendations for future reporting requirements. So, for example, in the past, when we've requested information from the tax department for various reports or studies that we've done, they have sometimes not delivered that data if they feel that it gets into proprietary information. And so I would expect that we would hear back, if there's a problem.
And if we eliminate the by county or by region, which we're doing, then it seems like we're just getting statewide data
For that, yeah.
for volume, for sales volume.
Yep, the sales volume is aggregated statewide. And then where the pumps are would be obviously where the pumps are,
Not quantity by pump.
Not quantity by volume.
not quantity. Exactly. Rep. Corey?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I thought I heard it in this committee, maybe it was in the tax department here. That they have, it's just a standard that when you get below a certain number.
Yeah.
It's anonymized or withheld, something.
Representative Sibilia?
I don't have my hand up.
Oh,
I
okay.
just took it down. I did.
Or Representative Southworth?
So I'm a little gray on the fuel sales, bulk fuel sales to consumers. We have a lot of companies that may jump borders. Or jump border to different states. Are we going to be able to track how much of those bulk fuel sales are out of state versus in state? Because we're only talking about Vermont, so we need to make sure that what we're counting isn't including the out of state sales as well.
Well, the department from the info from tax would be the Vermont
Who has to pay the
specific
tax?
tax. So,
Does a fuel dealer still have to charge the Vermont tax if they're delivering out of state?
I don't think so.
No.
It's just retail sales in the state.
Yeah.
So would their gallons still be counted as an in-state?
Um,
Because we're looking at volume.
we are, Representative Sibilia, I see you waving your hand.
Yeah, I feel like we may be heading to the swamp. I think we're looking for existing data sets.
That is part of that though, correct?
I think
That fuel sales.
Yeah,
And so you're asking for it to be broken down further?
well, I'm just bringing up a point where the information may not be accurate that we're getting.
What would be inaccurate about the data that we're getting?
If it
I don't
includes
understand.
state sales.
So people from out of state selling into Vermont?
But the opposite, people from Vermont selling out of state, the volume gallons that you're looking for would include that.
It wouldn't include it because it doesn't have the road tax, the Vermont road tax on it. If you're selling, if a Vermont distributor is selling out to New Hampshire, they'll pay New Hampshire road taxes, not Vermont road taxes.
I just, if we're doing volume only, I think that volume is going to probably include everything that they pump out of that.
I'm guessing Mr. Cota can answer this question for us for the record now.
Back go to Middle Hill. When it comes to transportation fuels paid for by the distributor, no matter where they're coming from, Canada, New York, Massachusetts, once they import it, that's when it's reported with the Department of Motor Vehicles. When it comes to heating fuel, it's just retail fuel delivered in bulk to Vermont. So if I'm a heating fuel company in Bellows Falls and I sell 5 million gallons of heating oil and I sell 2 million gallons in Vermont and 3 million gallons in New Hampshire, only the 2 million gallons that I sell in Vermont I'll pay the 2-cent fee for weatherization that will be collected. So because it's retail delivered in Vermont, it's different than registration for biggie stepping. Didn't put that on there.
Well,
Thank you.
can I ask a clarifying question about that? So if for transportation fuels, a distributor is going to pay the road tax, let's call it the road tax, just to be clear, only on what they sell in Vermont, isn't that so?
Yes, so when they import it into Vermont, what's different about transportation fuels, which is intuitive, but what's worth saying, you're dropping 9,000 gallon tanker truck into a underground storage tank. And that's when you cross the border, deliver it. Whereas heating fuel, you can put 2,800 gallons of heating oil on a truck and drive across the border all day long.
Yeah.
So you're only counting the gallon that you sell in Vermont, whereas for transports, it's much easier to track.
Yeah.
Because transports are coming in and they're unloading all of the fuel in the tanker into one tank.
Right.
So
But-
yes,
But the gas is in the underground tank and the retail outlet that's located in Vermont is easy to crash.
yes, much easier.
Yeah, okay.
Rep Southworth and
May
then.
I ask, Mr. Coda, clarifying question? So with heating fuels going across border, when they report gallons to the state of Vermont, are those included?
So when they pay the 2-cent fuel tax to the Vermont Tax Department, 20th of the month, it's only those sales within Vermont. If they bring in fuel to their bulk distributor in Vermont, but then move that fuel to New Hampshire to sell to a customer in New Hampshire, they don't count those gallons. You're only paying weatherization tax on the fuel tax. 2-cent per gallon fuel tax and heating oil, kerosene, and propane when it is sold in Vermont. Gallons brought into Vermont but sold in New Hampshire or New York or Massachusetts are not paying that 2 cents.
Right, but the total gallons that they pump out of that meter, are they reported to the state in some fashion? I guess is what I'm getting at, because we're looking at volume on this.
Yeah.
It's just volumes based on the tax.
Based on the tax, which is audited by the Department of Tax to determine whether or not the gallons that they reported are in fact have a corresponding delivery ticket to ensure that they're paying the correct amount.
So, I want to make sure we, finish the bill. So I want to, and Rep Speedy, I saw your hand up. We haven't gotten there yet, but I do want to emphasize some upcoming points, that we're going to get to, which is
I
that
put my hand down.
okay, which is that we're specifically requiring this first crack at the report when it comes back in months, whatever, to assess the data gaps that we might need to take a look at, to identify existing reports that may build on this, to consider indicators that help us better understand what we're trying to get out here in the report, and to make any recommendations for future reporting requirements. So it's important to understand, I think, that we want to do the best job we can, making our intent clear. And then the work, assuming that the Senate passes this bill, the work begins. And we'll get a report back that says, here's our first stab at this. Thank you for the direction, and here's how we think it could be better. So while we try to see around corners, we can't always see around every corner. Representative Sedalia, sorry, hand up, hand down. Okay. All right, EVSE. Does that look good to everybody?
What do you want?
I'm moving on from
Line
fuel
9.
sales.
Okay, so
Yeah, number 7.
you could include locations in that. So there, well. So perhaps after level 2, private electric vehicle supply. Equipment installation, both fast charging and level 2, including locations.
Okay. Alrighty. Vehicle registration. That gets us to EVs versus gas, and then light, medium, and heavy duty. And then fossil fuel and electricity consumption per unit of economic output. I think that was Secretary Moore's suggestion, so I think we'll toss that back to her and see if she thinks that's what she was getting at. And then this now gets to the also includes, which are always good. So we have maps and graphic displays of the data compiled. So we can either leave that only here or include it up above. So when we go back to the beginning of the bill, we can make that decision. Data gaps necessary to illustrate the impacts of the clean energy transition. In other words, here's our first attempt. What data are we missing?
Yeah, I think there's a wording problem there.
Uh-huh.
I think it should be more like, an assessment of needed data or, because that makes it sound like that we need data gaps to illustrate, but we actually need data.
Additional data?
Right. An assessment, additional data needed to illustrate the.
Okay. An identification of existing reports and requirements that could support the reporting of relevant indicators. So here's all the things that we think might make this better. Consideration of equity and just transition indicators with the goal of better understanding the benefits and burdens of the clean energy transition. Rep. Sibelia, if we could also add location here. I
That
think
is, yes, exactly what I
Yeah.
would like to see us do.
So how about consideration of equity and just transition with the goal of better understanding the benefits and burdens of the clean energy transition? How about across Vermont and by region?
Yes. Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Put the star on region.
Well, again, county, I think is going to be a problem. Region leaves it open to let the data tell us how it can be mapped. Some data may be statewide, some data may be available by county. Some data maybe the best they can do is put it on a map and we define our own regions. We zoom in. So Ellen.
Yeah, I want to go back to Rep. Tori's point. I don't like that grammar. How about an assessment of the data
Okay.
and a recommendation of additional data necessary?
That's great.
Great. Better. And an assessment of the data also
That
gets
goes for
to
analysis.
yes.
And you skipped over the word assessment. It's been there.
Yeah.
And it's,
Yeah.
we could change it.
Change it to analysis.
Yes.
Love it.
An analysis of the data and a recommendation for additional data needed. Okay.
Going back to it was Rep. Marler's point about restricting ourselves to concerns about the clean energy transition, although that is certainly a primary concern. If we try to think of a more general phrase like evolving energy market, maybe it takes that out of the out of that box.
I was going to say, we could also say the changing energy landscape,
Okay. Yeah,
Yes.
something like that, a little bit.
changing.
On page 3, is that where we?
Well, everywhere where it says clean energy transition,
Okay.
it's what did you say, changing energy
Changing
landscape?
energy
Landscape, yeah, sure, that's fine.
Yeah, I would not like to see us put in something around markets because we have both regulated and unregulated. So
Good, I like it.
Okay. So, all right, having worked through the whole thing, now let's go back to the top. Now we know everything that we've got in there. Now let's go back to the top And are we doing purpose or intent? And how do we feel about lines 9 through 16? Considering all that has come to pass. Rep. Sabelli?
Sorry, my hand does not
Yeah.
lower, but I will take the opportunity to say I would like us to put in a statement of purpose.
Okay. So,
Um,
how did you
and-
feel about your original purpose statement? Or the
I
original?
think that was fine. We could use Rep. Torrey's language that she just talked about in terms of the transition.
So
I
it would
also
be-
think it's important for us to state that we are seeking to understand this by region. And, really we're trying to understand the challenges to understanding this by region, right? So if there's no data, that's important for us to know.
So I would say then that we go back to Ellen's, maybe the as introduced. We put purpose back in. This bill proposes to require the Agency of Natural Resources, it's not DPS.
Yep.
To report on Vermont's changing energy landscape. Uh,
I have a suggestion.
uh-huh.
Line 15. Because you've already started to change that. So it's so they shall publish a report that highlights existing data sources and indicators relevant to understanding the challenges, understanding the changing energy landscape and the challenges it poses by region or
Yes.
by that ending phrase you maybe need to work on, but instead of the impacts word. So anyways, that's my pitch, but we could work on it a little bit.
I like that.
Challenges and opportunities. It's not just challenges. Okay. And that is in the purpose statement and then in lines 14, 15, or where does that go?
Well, I think if you put it on 14 and 15, then it is making it part of the directive to
Great.
A&R. Right? Because that
Yeah.
reads as like, this is what the scope of the report is.
Okay. So the purpose will just be
Body.
require the Agency of Natural Resources to report on Vermont's changing energy landscape. And then down below, existing data sources and indicators relevant to the changing energy landscape in Vermont and the challenges and opportunities it presents by region.
I had the word understanding in there.
Yes. Did you get all that?
Yes.
Okay.
But you,
It
so
sounds
you were,
great.
It does sound great.
Or
Or,
we could say the distribution of benefits and burdens around this. I don't know, something like that. Because that, there is that equity piece we bring up later.
I like that too.
that would be
I like that too. Um. Other thoughts? I know. She's pretty good.
He's the writer.
so then we're gonna strike by county everywhere.
I think we should strike by county everywhere. I think Secretary Moore was really clear about that. I think we've made our point about region and location in a lot of other places.
You want to add something about, I'm in vehicle registration, it's on line 12 on page 2. And, obviously we would have
detail about locations there. Um, just something to say there.
In line 16, I had suggested, I don't know what, hopefully you're taking note on this whole line 16 thing,
On
but
page 1.
yeah, but that applies to the full report.
Right.
And maps them by location and maps them by location. So that applies to everything below. Right?
Well, we're kind of emphasizing, if we're gonna leave that in the transportation fuels section. We're kind of emphasizing the locations, the number of locations that reach out outlets there. Or do we leave that out there?
No, I think that was to try to make number 6 clear that we were getting at both
Yeah.
aggregate sales from tax and then meter pump locations from ag.
Okay.
But if you want to, sure, just put it in line number 8, just by location. I mean, I definitely think we're making our point about location.
Yeah.
Line 8 as in number 6.
Oh, sorry.
Is that what-
No, I was on parenthetical number 8 under the vehicle registrations.
You want to add,
Yeah, I think what Rep Campbell is, I understand what Rep Campbell is saying, which is that, well, I mean, we want all of this by location.
Yeah, I wasn't advocating that, sorry for it. I was just asking.
Okay. So maybe,
They would leave it out for now.
yeah. I think in my
Although there are two things that we do want to know locations about, and that is line 8, division
6 and 7.
and 7.
Yeah.
Both of those two.
Why don't we emphasize it in those two places? And then,
Page 2.
and then I'll just confirm, Ellen, with you that when we say in the whole subsection A on page 1, we say, and maps them by location, that applies to every single data point that we're requesting in the report.
so.
I'm on line
Yeah.
16.
Although that sentence will now read slightly different, but yes,
But we're keeping by location in there.
yes, okay.
Yeah, so that applies to
Yeah, and then it's also down further.
all the rest of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then
And I don't know where we landed on transportation stuff. So I wrote down, are you keeping so I wrote down the number and location
The
of,
page and the number again.
but this is nowhere.
Okay, this is.
Sorry.
but we're talking about page 2, line 8.
Line X.
Yeah, page 2, line 8, parenthetical 6.
Well, you dictated something that isn't anywhere on the page, I think. And
Uh,
could go on 6. This is my question. The number and location of retail outlets of gasoline and diesel fuel using data from tax and ag. That is what I wrote down. Is that replacing
No,
6?
it's transportation fuel sales can just stand.
Okay,
That's from tax.
yeah.
And then if you want to add a new number 7 or just continue
Yes.
that sentence on, we settled on adding the number and location of retail outlets. And I think Rep. Sibilia wanted to say as measured by metered pumps. Because that's what we get from ag, but we don't say it's coming from ag, we just know.
As indicated by meter pumps.
Okay, as indicated by metered pumps.
And if we want to be really, really specific, we could say gasoline and diesel transportation fuel sales.
Okay. That's probably a good idea. Gasoline and diesel transportation fuel sales, that's 1. And then why don't we just break it out, a new number 7? location, number and location of retail gasoline and diesel transportation fuel sales as indicated by metered pumps.
The outlets, right? Retail outlets. Something about retail outlets.
I thought we said that.
Anyway.
Number and location of retail outlets as indicated by metered pumps.
Yes, yeah. You said, I mean, still trying to feel for this. So, yeah.
Okay.
Good, got it.
I'll write something.
I'll say it again. Gasoline and diesel transportation fuel sales. That's number 6. Gasoline and diesel transportation fuel sales.
Yes.
The new number 7 is number and location of retail outlets as indicated by metered pumps. That's what comes from ag.
Gas and diesel.
I'm gonna add gas and diesel.
Great. Add gas and diesel. No, that's good. Thanks. I skipped that one.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. So, timeline, Ellen. So you're gonna do a revised draft. And we are gonna want to get that over to Secretary Moore. And I think we have our next, Jack, when do we have, you don't need to bring it up on the screen. What's our next action on this bill? Is it Wednesday?
On H125.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so it's gonna be after next week. That's Wednesday.
I think it's Wednesday, the
12th, discussion.
Okay.
Yep, Wednesday, the 12th at 9 a.m.
Okay. And that should be committee discussion and final markup, I think. And do we have a possible vote then scheduled on the bill?
That is scheduled for the next day, March 13th, Thursday at 9 a.m.
Perfect.
Just says vote.
Great vote. Okay. So, Ellen, what do you think? I know you're really busy right now. When do you think that we might see an updated draft to send to the committee and send to Secretary Moore for her feedback?
I was thinking somewhere around the 10th or 11th.
Okay.
Because I will be in committee this afternoon.
Huh?
I'm going to committee to another committee shortly.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know if I will be able to draft it today.
Okay. And then I hope you're on vacation next week.
Yes, I am not drafting at all next week.
Great. So, why don't we, you were thinking the 10th or the 11th? That would be like Monday.
Is that
Monday would be awesome,
Okay.
if that's doable.
Yeah.
Great. So, so I will watch my email on Monday. And could you please, I am traveling on Monday. So, why don't you send that to Jack? Are you working on the Monday of when we're back of
Yeah.
our first week back?
Yep.
Okay. Just to make sure nothing bogs down. Could you please send the updated draft to Jack, Rep. Sibilia, me, and Rep. Campbell, so that one of us can ASAP, one of us will see it, and we'll get it right out to the committee and to Secretary Moore. And then, Jack, maybe you could see if Secretary Moore could join us on Wednesday for markup. Okay, we have a plan? We got 11:58. I will share, I'll share with the committee that for almost 12 years, I worked for a sort of an academic journal, or not really academic, but an historical magazine called Skiing History. And my job involved sending manuscripts out to an editorial review committee consisting of 20 people. So we are trotting familiar ground here, and everybody would write back and say what they thought, and it was my job to create a final draft. So I'm uniquely suited to this task. Jack, we can go off live.